The champagne glass was still in my hand when he said it. Mark Miller, chairman of Miller Industries, titan of logistics, and my boyfriend's father, lifted his own glass high above the glittering ballroom and smiled that shark smile of his. The room was packed with executives, senators, reporters, and socialites, all gathered beneath the dripping chandeliers of the Waldorf Astoria. A celebration of Miller Industries' impending merger with Canon Logistics. A merger worth $2.5 billion. A merger he didn't know I controlled.
To the future.
Mark announced, his voice booming over the hush.
And to my son, Paul, who will soon lead this company into a new era. And of course, to his companion, Debra, the pretty face who somehow found herself seated at this table.
The laughter came, brittle and cruel, rippling through the room like static. Paul froze beside me, his fingers tightening against the stem of his glass. My cheeks burned, but I didn't flinch. I had learned long ago never to give powerful men the pleasure of seeing me wounded. Mark leaned closer, his voice lowering just enough that only our table could hear.
You'll forgive me, dear, but the boardroom is no place for, well, let's call it what it is, arm candy.
Paul's jaw clenched.
Dad.
Not now, son.
Mark dismissed him with a flick of his wrist, turning back toward the crowd.
Business is for men who built empires with their own hands, not for women chasing handbags and diamonds. Isn't that right?
The applause returned, thunderous and sycophantic. Cameras flashed. I smiled, though I could feel my teeth cutting into the inside of my cheek. I had been insulted before, humiliated, dismissed, underestimated, but never in front of 200 witnesses. Never by the father of the man I loved. Inside, something shifted. "Excuse me," I murmured and rose to my feet. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I walked past waiters balancing silver trays, past investors whispering into their phones, past photographers craning for one last shot of the Miller's perfect family tableau. But I was not walking away. I was walking toward something. By the time I reached the ladies' room, my fury had cooled into something sharper. Something like ice. I locked the stall door, pulled my phone from my clutch, and dialed. "Cancel the merger," I said. There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice I trusted, my general counsel Marion, answered.
"Debra, are you certain? That's a $2.5 billion.
"Cancel it. Tonight."
Understood, Miss Cole."
I hung up, smoothed my dress, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the arm candy Mark had mocked. She was Debra Cole, founder and majority owner of Canon Logistics. The woman who had built a transportation empire from nothing but grit, betrayal, and sleepless nights. Mark Miller had just declared war, and I was more than ready. When I returned to the ballroom, Paul caught my arm immediately.
Debra, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped him. He doesn't understand.
"It's fine," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. "Let your father have his moment. He'll need it." Paul frowned.
What do you mean?
Before I could answer, Mark clapped a heavy hand on his son's shoulder.
There you are, boy. Tomorrow the board will finalize everything. Canon Logistics will be ours, and with it, the future of Miller Industries.
His eyes flicked over me again with disdain.
Even you'll admit, Debra, that some things are too big for outsiders' control.
I only smiled. "We'll see, Mr. Miller." I left him there, laughing with his friends, his pride swelling like a balloon already pricked by a needle. 2 hours later, while the Millers toasted into the night, Marion's call came through. I slipped outside onto the balcony. The city spread out below in glittering darkness.
It's done.
She said.
The board received your order. The merger is terminated. Effective immediately.
Relief surged through me, followed by a darker thrill. Mark Miller would wake up tomorrow to headlines that would eviscerate him. His empire would stagger without Cannon. His board would demand answers. His enemies would circle like wolves. And Paul, sweet, loyal Paul, would finally see the truth of the father he idolized. I looked down at the glowing streets of Manhattan and whispered, "Let the games begin." The door behind me creaked open. Paul stepped out, his expression strained.
Debra, what did you mean earlier? What games?
I turned to face him, but before I could speak, my phone buzzed again. Another call. Marion. Urgent. I answered. Her voice trembled.
Debra, we have a problem. Someone inside Cannon leaked your identity. Mark knows who you are.
The world seemed to tilt beneath me. From inside the ballroom came the sound of breaking glass. Then a voice shouting my name. Mark Miller's voice. And it was filled with fury. The echo of shattering glass rippled through the ballroom, silencing laughter as if someone had struck a match in a room full of gas. My name, barked from Mark Miller's throat, sliced through the chandelier's glow and landed squarely on me. His voice carried across the marble floors, low enough to curdle blood, loud enough to make every guest in the Waldorf Astoria freeze with their champagne midair. I turned from the balcony, my hands still braced against the cold stone railing. Paul stood beside me, caught between his father's fury and my unraveling secret. His eyes searched mine for an answer, but I had none to give him now. The doors to the balcony burst open. Mark's tall frame filled the threshold, his tuxedo gleaming black under the ballroom's light. He looked like a storm-given flesh, the veins in his neck raised, his lips pulled back in a snarl that would have made a lesser woman flinch.
So it's true.
He spat.
The whispers weren't rumors after all. You're the one behind Cannon. You made a fool of me in my own house.
Gasps rippled through the crowd behind him. I could feel their stares pressing into my back. The senators, the reporters, the polished wives of board members. They smelled scandal the way wolves smell blood. Paul tried to step between us.
Dad, stop.
Not another word, Paul.
Mark's shout rattled the doorframe.
You
He jabbed his finger again at me.
have been playing your little game long enough. But it ends tonight. Cannon Logistics will not destroy what I built with my own hands.
I steadied my breathing. On the inside, my fury was steel. On the outside, I wore calm like armor. What you built, I said softly, my voice carrying because the room was hushed. Mark, you inherited Miller Industries. You didn't build it, you were born into it. And men like you despise women like me, not because we're weak, but because we prove you irrelevant. A murmur surged through the ballroom, sharper than the tinkle of broken glass on marble. Mark's eyes went wild. For the first time that evening, his mask slipped. Rage carved deep lines into his face. He lunged a half-step forward, but Paul gripped his arm.
Dad, please.
Paul pleaded, his voice taut with desperation.
You're making this worse.
I met Paul's eyes. There it was, the truth he hadn't known until this moment. The woman at his side wasn't just his father's companion. As Mark termed me, she was the power behind the very company his father thought he owned. And I had just detonated the secret in front of the world. Mark had wrenched his arm free from Paul's grip, his voice shaking with venom.
This merger will collapse before it begins. I'll see to it that every board member, every investor, every man worth of salt knows exactly who you are and what you've done. A liar, a manipulator, A woman who sleeps her way to the top.
The words hit like stones. A few guests looked down, embarrassed. Others leaned in, eager for spectacle. I felt the sting, yes, but only for a heartbeat. Because what Mark didn't know was that the board had already received my call. The merger was no longer his to command. His empire was already slipping through his fingers, and he was too blinded by pride to see it. I lifted my chin, letting my silence speak louder than his fury.
Look at her.
Mark roared to the crowd.
Not a shred of shame. That's because she thinks she's won. Well, let's see how smug you look when the press learns you built your empire on deception.
A senator's wife whispered into her husband's ear. A journalist adjusted his camera. Mark was giving them everything. Scandal, betrayal, a headline made for blood. And in that instant, a thought crystallized in me like ice. Mark Miller wasn't just my enemy. He was my downfall if I didn't strike first. Paul turned toward me, eyes full of conflict.
Debra, tell me it isn't true. Tell me you didn't hide this from me.
I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, a camera flash seared across the balcony. Then another. The reporters had moved closer, their shutters clicking like machine gun fire. Mark straightened, smoothing his tuxedo as if he'd already won. His shark smile was back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you tonight's entertainment, the woman who thought she could outwit me.
The ballroom filled with uneasy laughter, tinged with cruelty. I looked at Mark, really looked at him. A man whose empire was crumbling, who didn't yet know he'd already lost everything. My voice was calm, low, but it carried. You should be careful, Mark. The higher the balloon rises, the sharper the needle waiting. His face darkened, his smile faltering for the briefest flicker. And then, across the room, I saw movement. Board members slipping away toward the exits, phones in their hands, whispers flying like sparks in dry grass. The tide was already turning, but Mark didn't see it. He was too busy drowning in his own fury. That was when the lights in the ballroom flickered once, twice, then dimmed to black. A scream rang out, and the night, already on edge, tipped into chaos. The blackout held for a single, punishing heartbeat, then another. The ballroom was a cathedral of darkness, punctuated only by the frantic strobe of reporters' flashes. Gasps and whispers collided in the dark like panicked birds. But I didn't move. Neither did Mark. I stood still, emerald satin pooling at my feet, my chest rising slow and steady while the crowd dissolved into fear. Beside me, Mark's silhouette was rigid, his silver hair catching the weak flicker of the chandeliers, fighting to come back alive. He wouldn't give them panic. He wouldn't give me panic. The lights surged, buzzed, and finally roared back. Guests blinked against the sudden blaze, shielding their eyes. Waiters scrambled to steady trays. Senators muttered about generators. Socialites clutched their diamonds as if power outages could steal them. Mark's voice cleaved through the noise.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you see? This is what happens when you let outsiders into places they don't belong.
His eyes locked on me, his words sharpened for every ear in the room.
She thinks she owns a future. She thinks she's untouchable. But look what she brings instead, chaos.
I said nothing. I didn't need to. Because across the room, the board members who had been sliding toward the exits were no longer subtle. Phones glued to their ears, faces pale with urgency. They no longer whispered. They barked orders. Their retreat was turning into an exodus. And every flash of a camera caught it. Paul saw it too. His blue eyes darted from me to his father to the board scrambling out of reach. He shook his head like a man waking from a dream.
Dad, you don't understand.
Mark barked a laugh.
Don't I? I understand perfectly. That woman
He pointed at me with the flourish of a judge pronouncing sentence.
is trying to steal everything we built, everything I bled for, and you're standing there letting her.
Paul's jaw tightened. He took a step closer to me. Not him. Me. The crowd reacted. A ripple, a shift, a visible line being drawn in marble dust and spilled champagne. The son beside the woman his father had just branded a liar. Mark's composure cracked. His voice dropped low, venomous.
Paul, step away from her. Now!
Paul didn't. The reporters surged forward, cameras raised, their shutters clattering like machine gun fire. Questions fired over each other.
Is the merger collapsing?
Miss Cole, are you the real
Mr.
owner of
Miller,
Cannon?
has the board turned against you?
Security struggled to hold the press back, but it was too late. The story wasn't waiting for tomorrow's headlines. It was already being born beneath the chandeliers. Mark lunged forward, seizing Paul's arm. His voice shook, not with weakness, but with a father's rage.
You don't know what she is. She'll destroy you. She'll destroy us all.
And there it was, the shift I'd been waiting for. His control, his mask, his empire. They were slipping faster than even he could deny. I stepped between them, calm as marble. No, Mark, I said softly, though the room carried every word. I'm not the one who destroys. I'm the one who builds. His face blanched, not because of what I said, but because just behind me, one of the board members, Mr. Allen, his most loyal lieutenant, had returned. His phone still in hand, his expression grave. He didn't address Mark. He looked at me.
The vote has been called. Effective immediately, the board has moved to reconsider leadership. Your stake, Miss Cole, has been confirmed.
The room broke into gasps, reporters shoving for better angles, senators shaking their heads as if history had just shifted in their sight. Paul froze beside me, the truth rushing into him like ice water. And Mark staggered back a step, the chandeliers gleaming cruelly in his eyes. For the first time that night, he looked old. Not powerful, not eternal, just old. But even then, he smiled. That shark smile, thinner now, desperate, but dangerous all the same.
This isn't over.
He whispered.
You think you've won, Debra, but empires don't collapse in a night. They burn slow, and I will make sure you burn with mine.
Before I could answer, a voice rang out from the far end of the ballroom. Sharp, cold, final.
Mr. Miller,
The head of security called, his radio still in hand.
the board has issued its directive. Effective immediately, you are to vacate the premises. You no longer represent Miller Industries.
The chandeliers glittered above him like judgment. Mark froze, just for a fraction of a second. His jaw clenched, his shark smile faltered, and then, to everyone's horror, he reached into his tuxedo jacket. When Mark's hand emerged, it wasn't a weapon. It was a folder. Thin, black, edged in gold. He snapped it open with the violence of a man unsheathing a blade. Papers spilled like shrapnel across the nearest table. Board minutes, merger agreements, financial records. His arsenal of ink and signatures.
This
Mark barked, his voice booming over the chaos.
isn't over because I say it isn't. Every signature here ties your hands. Every clause locks your future to mine. You think you can cut me out? You'll strangle yourself in the fine print before you take a single step.
Reporters surged closer, cameras flashing like lightning. Senators craned their necks. Wives whispered like moths against glass. I didn't flinch. My emerald gown caught the chandelier's light, and I moved forward slowly, deliberately, until the glow rested on me. "Paper cuts both ways, Mark," I said. My voice was calm, steady, a voice meant for boardrooms, not battlefields. "And while you were clinging to old contracts, I was drafting new ones. Signed, sealed, effective as of an hour ago." I reached into my clutch and drew out a single sheet. White, crisp, stamped with the board seal. Gasps rippled as Mr. Allen stepped forward again, confirming it with a solemn nod. "This," I continued, raising the document high enough for the press to see, "is the board's resolution. Your power has already been revoked. Your empire isn't burning slowly, Mark. It's already gone cold." For the first time, his hand trembled. Not from age, from understanding. Mark's papers still littered the ballroom floor, fluttering with every step of the waiters hurrying to clean shattered glass and spilled champagne. The chandeliers glowed harshly above, exposing every wrinkle in his fury, every tremor of his hand. But I wasn't looking at Mark anymore. I was looking at Paul. His blue eyes weren't his father's, too soft, too searching. But tonight, they were hard with hurt. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear.
You should have told me, Debra.
I held his gaze. I couldn't. If he knew before tonight, if anyone knew, the merger would never have reached this point. It had to happen this way. Paul's jaw tightened.
That's not an excuse. I've stood by you, defended you. And all this time, you've been hiding who you really are? My father had to drag it out in front of the entire world.
The shame rose hot in my chest, but I didn't let it reach my face. I had steadied my glass on the nearest table and forced my voice calm. I wasn't hiding from you. I was protecting myself. Protecting us. He shook his head.
No, you were protecting your empire.
The words struck, sharper than any insult Mark had thrown. But before I could answer, cameras popped again, and the reporters surged closer, sensing blood between us. Their questions overlapped, desperate for conflict.
Mr. Miller, are you siding with your father or Ms. Cole?
Debra, did you deceive Paul as well as the board? Is this the end of the engagement?
Paul's hand flexed at his side, as if he wanted to grab mine but couldn't, not with the world watching. He turned away, shoulders squared, his silence as damning as any answer. Mark seized the moment. His voice carried like a hammer blow.
Do you see, ladies and gentlemen? Even my son sees it now. She isn't here for him. She isn't here for this family. She's here for herself, for power, for control.
His laughter filled the hall, brittle but commanding. The crowd leaned toward him, some nodding, some whispering. He was wounded, but he was still dangerous. I wanted to speak, to cut through the venom. But just then, Mr. Allen returned, the black folder I had handed him now clutched under his arm. His face was grim.
The board has reconvened.
He said loudly, ensuring every ear caught the words.
The contracts you're waiving, Mr. Miller, are null. They've been superseded. Cannon's leadership, effective immediately, is confirmed under Ms. Cole's stake.
Gasps broke across the ballroom. Reporters scrambled, elbows jabbing, lenses zooming. Mark's face blanched, then reddened.
Lies. Forged. Manipulated. No one takes Miller Industries from me.
But his voice was thinner now, a crack showing through the armor. He lunged toward Allen, but Paul caught his father's arm, holding him back.
Dad,
Paul said sharply, his voice carrying for the first time.
stop.
Mark turned on his son, wild-eyed.
Stop. You're supposed to fight with me. You're supposed to.
Open your eyes.
Paul said. His voice shook, but his spine was straight.
The board's gone. The senators are gone. They've chosen her. And maybe they're right.
For a moment, silence claimed the room. Even the reporters stilled, their flashes suspended mid-breath. I met Paul's eyes. For the first time since the night began, I didn't see a boy standing in his father's shadow. I saw a man torn between two worlds, the empire he'd been born into and the future standing before him. But his expression wasn't trust. It was something darker.
You lied to me,
He said again softly now.
and I don't know if I can forgive that.
The weight of their eyes, Mark's blazing, Paul's wounded, pressed against me harder than the flash of every camera in the room. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. But then the board's decision replayed in my mind. My call, my contracts, my name finally spoken aloud in the halls that had dismissed me as a companion, an accessory. I inhaled slowly, let the strength return, and straightened my shoulders. "This is done, Mark," I said. My voice was low, but the silence was heavy enough to carry it. "The board has spoken. You've lost." Mark's laugh rang hollow, a jagged sound. He bent, snatched one of his scattered papers from the floor, and waved it high.
Lost? You think signatures on paper make you queen of this empire? You think these men will follow you instead of me?
He jabbed the sheet toward the crowd.
I bled for them. I fed their families. I built this dynasty when you were nothing.
The crowd stirred uneasily. Senators exchanged glances. Reporters scribbled like mad, the heat of a scandal radiating from the marble floor. Paul flinched at the venom in his father's words, but he didn't step forward this time. He looked at me instead.
Debra, please, tell me this isn't just revenge.
I wanted to tell him everything, that my empire wasn't built out of spite but out of necessity, that every sleepless night, every betrayal survived had made me harder, sharper, unbreakable. But the words caught in my throat. Revenge wasn't the whole story, but it was part of it, and Paul saw it in my silence. His face fell, the blue of his eyes shuddering behind something colder. Mark pounced on it, smelling blood.
See? Even she won't deny it. She doesn't love you, Paul. She never did. You were a pawn in her little game, and you played it well. But now the game's done, and she doesn't need you anymore.
The word struck him. I saw it. A crack in the man I loved, widening into something fragile and dangerous. I stepped closer, reached for his hand, but he pulled back. Not in anger, but in hurt. And that was worse. The room shifted again, movement near the back. Mr. Allen had returned with others. Not just board members, but security. 6 men in black suits fanned out across the ballroom floor. The crowd gasped, pressing against the walls to let them pass.
Mr. Miller,
Allen said, voice steady.
the directive is final. Your leadership has been revoked. Effective immediately, you are to vacate the premises. If you resist, you'll be escorted.
Mark's face twisted, half fury, half disbelief. He looked around the room, desperate for an ally. None came. Even the senators, his oldest allies, had gone. Only the press remained, their cameras devouring every flicker of his fall.
This is a coup. You think you can strip me of my life's work? This company is mine.
No, I said quietly. It was yours. Now it belongs to the people who will keep it alive. For the first time that night, he looked at me, not with disdain, not with rage, but with something like fear. Then, in a sudden movement, he tore free of Paul's attempt to steady him and lunged, not at me, not at Allen, but at the nearest table. His hand closed around a crystal glass, and for a terrible moment, I thought he'd shatter it into a weapon. The crowd screamed. Reporters ducked. Socialites pressed their jeweled hands to their mouths. But Mark didn't strike. Instead, he slammed the glass down, so hard it fractured, shards skittering across the white linen. His chest heaved, silver hair slicked back but falling loose now, his age showing in every line of his face.
You think this ends the night. But empires don't fall in a ballroom. They fall slow. They burn. And Debra, I will make sure you burn with me.
The words dripped into the silence like poison. Even the reporters didn't breathe. Paul closed his eyes, as if he couldn't bear to look at either of us. When he opened them again, the choice was written there. Not for his father, not for me. For himself.
I can't do this.
He whispered. His voice cracked, but it carried. And then he turned, walked past the cameras, past the senators' wives whispering behind jeweled hands, past the security officers who parted for him without a word. He didn't look back. The ballroom tilted around me, equal parts triumph and loss. I had won, but I had never felt less victorious. Mark was being surrounded now, security flanking him, his papers trampled underfoot. His eyes locked on mine as they moved to escort him out. The sharp smile was gone. What remained was something worse. The promise of a man who would rather drown an empire than see me rule it. And as his voice echoed one last time through the chandeliers, I knew this was not over. Not by a long shot. The ballroom emptied slowly, as though history itself didn't want to leave too soon. Reporters drifted last, reluctant to surrender their angles. Senators muttered into phones, already rewriting allegiances. The chandeliers, steady now, gleamed over a battlefield not of blood but of paper, glass, and pride. Mark was gone, dragged out, his voice swallowed by the marble halls that had once echoed only his name, but his shadow lingered. I stood at the center of it all, emerald satin rippling around my feet like a tide refusing to recede. My hands still clutched the board-stamped document, though it felt heavier now, less like a victory, more like a verdict. Paul hadn't returned. The press had tried to chase him down, but no headline could capture the weight of a man forced to choose between blood and love, between legacy and freedom. His absence pressed on me harder than the presence of 1,000 flashing cameras ever had. Mr. Allen approached quietly. His charcoal suit was immaculate despite the chaos, his expression unreadable.
The board will expect you in the morning, he said. The transition must be swift. Investors will panic otherwise.
When he walked away, the words rang hollow, because winning had never felt so much like losing. I moved toward the balcony doors, the very ones I had once entered through, unnoticed, a woman draped on Mark's arm. Now, when I pushed them open, the city spread beneath me like a living canvas. Towers of glass and steel burned with lights, each window a story, each street a river of fire. The hum of it rose to me, the empire I had claimed, the empire I had remade. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, the night air pressed cold against my skin, whispering of what it had cost. Behind me, the ballroom was a husk, broken glass, scattered papers, and the faint echo of Mark's threat still clinging to the walls. Ahead of me, the city waited, vast and unyielding. And somewhere in that city, Paul walked alone. I closed my eyes, let the ache wash through me, then straightened. My chestnut waves caught the wind, emerald silk shivered in the night, and I whispered to the skyline as if it were listening. I build. The words anchored me. Empires might burn, but I would endure. And though the night ended in ashes, the dawn would belong to me.